I'm looking into the camera, that thing there?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so we're not here to bother the teacher, not a student, but instead an author. We actually had an author visit today. he was answering a lot of questions, telling us like how to be a better writer, which seems pretty cool, doesn't it?
It's pretty cool.
All right. So last year we spoke with Catherine Love, and this time we have Mr.
Wil Mara.
Yes, the author of several books that are for children and adults.
Which covers pretty much everyone.
All right.
A very busy author.
So we have a couple questions for him.
All right.
I will start off with a couple, 4 questions. What inspired you to become an
But there's
author?
more than 4. There's like 8 on here. Don't
And
lie
then-
to these poor people.
He's gonna
I know
answer
the
the
other
most.
half.
You're going to do the other 4?
Yeah.
Well, just so we get that straight.
All right.
All right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So number 1, what inspired you to become an author?
Honestly, I was at a job I couldn't stand, and I wanted to get out of it, and I always thought I could write. So I started writing, and I wrote my first book, and the publisher I brought it to accepted it, and they said, do you have anything else? So I wrote another book, and they accepted that one, and then they said, do you want to start working on our editorial staff? And that got me out of that job I didn't like. So that's really what it got started. So I'd like to say there was some really cool inspiration behind starting my writing, but the reality is I just wanted to get out of that lousy job.
And get a better job.
And get a better job, that's exactly right.
All right. Question number 2. Most authors only work on either children's books or adult books. What inspired you to write both kinds?
I don't think there was anything in particular. If I get an idea, generally speaking, I'll know right away if that idea is for adults or for kids. The ideas sort of come unpredictably. I don't sit down and go, I need to have an idea today. So if an idea comes, usually right away it's like, this is obviously for adults or this is obviously for kids. I enjoy writing for both for different reasons. I like writing for kids in large part because I like kids. I have my own kids. I think I was a kid once myself, and I enjoyed reading a lot when I was a kid. So it's fun to write stuff that kids enjoy reading now. It sort of makes it come full circle. So, but I don't have any specific reasons beyond that. If I get an idea that's obviously an adult book, I write it for adults.
All right.
I don't think I sit down and say, I'm going to write a kid's book today. I don't think of it like that.
All right. Question number 3. Who is your favorite author and why?
I would say if I had to pick one author above all others, I've always loved the writing of John Steinbeck. I like everything he's done. He's one of those rare authors, even like his obscure work is cool. His writing style is marvelous. He had a tremendous understanding of the language. He's one of those authors who's very economical, and he understands the meaning and impact of every word. So here's a guy who in one sentence can say what most authors take a whole paragraph to do. His understanding of the language was great. Beautiful word choices. He can paint wonderful pictures. He just had a massively intense, deep, profound, masterful understanding of the language, and I love reading. My favorite book of all time is not one of his. One of my 5 favorite is one of his, but To Kill a Mockingbird is my favorite book. But Harper Lee only wrote really 2 books in her lifetime. Steinbeck, anything he writes, I will read. Anything. If he wrote down his shopping list for the supermarket, I'd read it. The shopping list. Wow, the way he put milk on there, what a master. Look at that. Wow, he spelled bread exactly right here. So.
Question number 4. What is your favorite book that you have read and why?
I think he just said it.
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably my favorite book ever. If I had to choose one, I have 5, but that's my favorite. Like To Kill a Mockingbird is number 1. The Catcher in the Rye, which you guys will read eventually, and I guarantee you'll love it. Up the Down Staircase by Belle Kaufman, The Partner by John Grisham, and John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. But To Kill a Mockingbird, because in my opinion, it is the most important, impactful novel of the second half of the 20th century. The second half from the 50s onward was so influenced and impacted, and you guys will learn this in time, by To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, she wrote a book where today it even still has some controversial impact, but for her to publish it when she did and wrote it when she did was very bold and brave and courageous, and that book just set the United States on fire, which it should have done. I wish it had been written a lot earlier, but what an impact. She was proof that a book can change the world.
Well, we're going to read that in 8th grade, so people, 7th graders, wait for next year, or if you can't wait, go to the library.
Unless you have time.
It's fantastic. It's amazing.
Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to pass on the rest of the questions from 5 to 8 to Aiden.
Gracias, señorita. Okay.
I don't have to answer them in Spanish, do I?
No. I'm like the only one who can actually speak fluent Spanish.
Okay.
So, question number 5. Do you base your characters on real people? If so, which ones?
Generally, I don't. Usually, characters are the product of pure invention. I mean, I guess they're all based on real people in the sense that, like, all I can base them on is people. But I don't sit down and say, this character was based on Bob. You know, I mean, generally, I don't do that. Every now and then, I've done that a little bit. 95% of the time, I don't.
Oh, I feel really
I mean, sometimes a character has to fit a story. I mean, the main character may be based on someone, or at least a piece of this person, a piece of this person. But a lot of secondary and tertiary characters sometimes just need to fit the story. So you go, I need a tall guy here, so I just make up somebody who's tall or whatever. I mean, the lead characters are, it's called an amalgamation. You amalgamate, I like that character, that quality from that person who's a friend of mine, that person's my neighbor, and I need that quality, and you build a character. But very rarely is it that person is that person I know in my life. That doesn't happen that much. Every now and then. I usually get in trouble when I do that.
So, question number 7. What do you like to do in your spare time other than write?
I told you this before. I have a studio of my own, and I like to do music. I've been doing music all my life. When I was a kid, I used to write songs and sell them to music publishers for extra money. This was back in the 80s, the 1980s, by the way. And I sort of went away from that when I started writing, and then I came back to it. And one of the things I like about it is I write songs better than ever before, even though I'm not doing anything with them. But it's nice to have something you do where there's no deadline, there's nobody expecting anything. You know, I mean, I have 11 songs ready to record for an album, and there's nobody expecting it. And if it takes me 2 years to do it, then it takes me 2 years to do it. It's nice to have something where you can just make your own rules, whatever. That I like that a lot. And I like watching The Big Bang Theory.
Oh,
Science.
And reading, of course.
nice.
Yeah.
Question number 8. Where did the idea for the Twisted series come from?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wish I could give you a really terrific answer. All my life I've always thought of stories that were sort of like Twilight Zone-y, like Goosebumps, kind of Stranger Things-ish. I've always just naturally come up with stories like that, and I've always liked stories like that. So after a while, I started to realize I had all these story ideas collected that were like that. And I thought, I've got to come up with a series. I could put all these into one series. And a publisher, and I didn't say this outside before, it was originally called Twisted Reality. And the publisher said, how about just Twisted? And I was like, that's fine. So I guess I just had those ideas for a long time. And finally a publisher said, let's do them. Why? I don't know. I'll look at something normal and like a twisted type story idea will come into my head. It's not there, but I don't know. My brain just seems to go there.
Oh.
For lack of a better way of putting it. There's something clearly wrong with me and I don't know what that is, but these are the stories I come up with. Like if my wife sees a car, it's a car. If I look at the same car, I'll see a story. I'll see some weird twisted kind of story out of it. I don't know why. I don't know why it works that way.
Relatable.
Writers are always like that.
Exactly. Their minds wander out of reality and you go, wouldn't it be cool if, and then you start to think about things that can happen because that's where stories come from. This doesn't happen in reality, and so your job as a fiction writer is to make it happen in a book because it doesn't happen in real life. So it's like entertainment. It's like, this can't happen, but if it could, how would it happen? And then you start writing it out. And how would the characters react? And all of a sudden you have a whole neat story.
I'd rather not have fiction things happen because usually they're scary things.
Exactly. So I mean, that's the point of fiction writing is you still always have that safety buffer of, but at the end of the day, it's just a book. You know, it's scary, but I can always close the book. You know, I mean, reality is scary enough by itself.
Can I say something?
Yes, you can. No, you can't. No. That's it. Go ahead. Fine.
All right. Like you said, you see, like when your wife sees a car, just ignore a car. When you see,
I assume so, unless she's not telling me something.
Okay. When you see cars, like you say, like it's a story there, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the same.
That's what
thing,
I said, right?
Like,
rewind. I said that, right? Did I say that? Okay.
Yeah.
It's like for like artists.
Now I can't lie about it because you recorded it.
Artists too. They also see something similar to that. Like they see like a picture.
Exactly. That's the benefit in society of creative people is we think outside the box. I had answered right before we came in here. A girl in the last group asked a great question. She said, "Are your stories inspired from real life?" And I gave her an example. I told you guys I was in California last week. Every day I would get up early and walk around because the neighborhood I was in I was unfamiliar with, and I just wanted to see it. I'm always fascinated by that. So I got up early and I'm walking around, and I walk into this bank parking lot, and it was closed. It was just a little bank, little parking lot, little bank. Like it's one of those banks that has like 8 people working there. It's like no big deal. And the parking lot in the back, there was this sign that said, "Parking is not allowed something like parking is not allowed overnight. Violators will be towed," or something like that. And what I thought was funny was there was a car parked right beneath the sign, and there was no one in it, no one around, and I was like, that's just funny. And just seeing that, like most people would go, "Oh, it's a car parked there illegally," but I saw immediately in my head, I saw a story. What if the people who worked in the bank knew that the car was there? What if there was a sign in the window? "I have a family emergency. I will come back for my car. Please don't have it towed." But that was like 4 years ago. And the people in the bank were like, we have the power to call the police and have them tow it. But now we're fascinated why no one's ever come back for it. So every day, these people who are like a family who work together, like one of the fun things about going to work every day is, did anything happen with the car today? Did anybody come back today? What's the story behind why this car was abandoned? It's a nice car. And then I thought, how could I turn this into a twisted story? Because, you guys, at your age, you don't drive. So how could I turn this into like a twisted story? And I thought, let's change the car and make it a locker. And there's a locker that's been locked for like 6-7 years, and all the kids know about it, but none of the administration or teachers, no one will talk about it. It's all mysterious. And every kid knows about the locker that's been locked for all these years. But then the kid whose locker is next to that locker comes in one day, and he does the combination on his lock and pulls it open, and then he realizes it's the locker that's always been locked. But his combination works on it. And now he realizes, wait a minute, how can I open this lock? And why do I have access to this locker now? So now the story begins. So now the reader is dying to know what's in this locker and what's the story behind it. And so that's a good example of how like ordinary life led to a story. Because I've already started developing that as another twisted story, but that just came from seeing a car parked in the bank parking lot. So I mean, I think that's what you were talking about, how like creative people, they see what's there and then they see more. Whereas most people see the car and then they keep walking and go, "Oh, it's a car parked in the parking lot." I think that's what creative people do. They're supposed to help us deal with reality. Here's the reality of your life every day. I'm going to give you a story so when you come home from your 10-hour job that you can't stand, you sit down and you can escape into a book and you take like a vacation for 2 hours. I think that's what creative people's job is to do, is to relieve you of the agony of life.
And Nathan, I'm sorry, your question is already answered.
Yeah.
Oh, that was your question was, did I see a parked car when I was in California? That was your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was one of the interesting questions that you heard so far?
Hang on, I got this junk in my pocket. Wait.
One eternity later.
Bear with me. I'm going to ask myself this question.
Okay.
Are these yours, these two?
These two we're gonna share, but
You got one.
Okay. Can I read them to myself? Do you want the privilege of reading? Do you want to read them?
Read the last one since you already read the first one.
Okay, which one do you want me to read?
Last one.
Last one.
Last one? All
Yeah.
right.
Well, actually, I did answer that first one, you think?
Yeah,
What is the first question, the first bonus question? We're in the bonus round now. What is the most interesting question you've ever been asked so far?
I think
You mean so far today or ever?
Yeah, today.
Today.
So you just answered it yourself with that California thing.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess, yeah, someone had said, where do your ideas come from real life, which is pretty interesting. That's a good question.
All right, so the last bonus question is...
All right, now this guys, we might have to say please lower your sound because this might get interesting. This is gonna see if we made another history.
Jimmy, the screen.
The screen.
Ah!
Oh, we're gone. Oh, we're back.
Okay.
Okay, so Kelly, say the question.
All right. The last question is this the first time that you've ever been interviewed like this?
Now, if we
You mean like in this room with the three of you?
No,
yeah,
like
the first time.
No,
Yeah,
like
duh.
ever being interviewed.
No, I've been interviewed before.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like a school, like a.
You know that lousy job I said I had before? They interviewed me for that. Would you be interested in a job you really hate? Yes, as a matter of fact, now that you mention it, I would be interested in that. But in a school, yes, I have been, but I don't think we had a video element to it before. I've done radio in schools where they had their own radio station. I've done audio. I don't think I've done video before.
So I guess we still make a little history.
No, you do. Yeah, I've never.
A little history.
I don't know any school. I don't know any schools who have a video studio. I mean, do you interrogate prisoners in here? Like, what is this for?
No. Like we interview teachers.
Father.
Wait,
That's what he said.
actually,
One eternity later.
People in here.
Yeah.
Right now they're not with us. They're in their classes, either having lunch, all that stuff. Right now we're the only
Learning
ones
and
in here.
everything.
yeah, we're gangsters. We skip classes.
Damn
We have lunch right now, okay? Alright, so thank you, Mr. Mara.
Yes.
And we apparently we made another history. Second time making history here.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, there we go.
Yay.
Thank you, and have a pleasant tomorrow.